Development, and her name is Kelly Lester. And they're here with us here today. I'll ask the both of them if they would just stand for a moment. That way you could see them and recognize them and make them feel welcome right here at the tower. Yeah, awesome. We're glad to have them here. And Kelly's making her way up this way, and I'm so glad she is this morning as a part of our time of worship. She was kind enough and generous enough to share a little bit of her journey, her story, and she's going to do the same here this morning as well and tell a little bit more about what Choices does to help address this need of unplanned and unwanted pregnancy. So welcome, Kelly. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you very much. So as Pastor said, my name is Kelly Lester. I am a wife to Robbie Lester. I am mother to 6 little Lester children, ages 11 down to 2. And I regret my abortions. If you could play the video, please.
$56 million babies are aborted worldwide every year. That's the entire population of the West Coast and more than triple the next leading cause of death, heart disease. We like to pretend that the church is exempt from this epidemic, but we're not. 3 out of 4 women who have had an abortion say they believe in God. And 66% of the clients at Choices Women's Center claim to attend a church in the area. There's no abortion clinic in town, but Fredericksburg still has the 5th highest abortion rate in Virginia. If you or someone you know is pregnant, there is help. If you or someone you know has had an abortion, there is hope. Since opening our doors in 2012, we have seen a 20% decrease in abortions in the Fredericksburg area. Abortion clinics are losing business. In 2012, there were 30 clinics. In 2016, there were only 20. Choices Women's Center is here to help. Together, we can make a difference. You can change a life.
Thank you. So when you see a video like the one that just played, what are your thoughts? Oftentimes, it's one of 2 thoughts. One, first off, I can't believe that that statistic is true. That 40% of women that have abortions are currently attending a church. Well, surely it's not a church that preaches the Bible. Or 2, that's really horrible. You know, somebody should do something about that. I'm glad that there's people out there that do that kind of a ministry. Well, let me tell you a story. It's my story. It's my story how my God is more than enough. I was raised in a Christian home. My parents were leaders in our church. They are still married. But as a child, I didn't feel loved by God, and I didn't feel valued by Him. I knew about Jesus, but I didn't actually know Jesus. And as a teenager, I wanted to belong, and I snuck out to a party with some friends, and at that party, I was raped by one of the most popular boys in the school. And when I told the other people in the school about it, they didn't believe me because they said, "Why would he do that to you?" And I went and I told my youth pastor, and she said, "See, if you'd never gone to that party, that wouldn't have happened." And so I began to feel shame and condemnation, and surely God would never love me. And so I began to freely give away what was taken from me, and at 15, I found myself pregnant. My boyfriend's mother drove me to the abortion clinic, handed me a wad of money, and said, "I'll be back to pick you up in a couple of hours." And that day, it changed my life. You hear that getting pregnant will ruin your life, but that day ruined my life. I stopped playing sports because I didn't care anymore. I stopped getting good grades in school and barely passed my senior year because I didn't care anymore. I stopped going to church except when my parents made me because I didn't care anymore. And I started doing drugs, drinking alcohol because I didn't care anymore. For the next 15 years, I continued on that path of destruction, doing just about anything and everything you can imagine, things you probably couldn't and definitely never should. And then one day, in the middle of a domestic fight with my boyfriend, he was kneeling over me with a board in his hand about to hit me over the head. And he dropped the board and punched me in the face, broke many of the bones in my face, saw what he had done, and the fight stopped. 2 days later, I came home to Virginia, and my dad met me, and he was bawling, and he hugged me, and I told the story that abused women often say. I was in a car accident, I'm fine. And I later found out that in the middle of the night of that fight, my dad had been awoken by the Lord, and he saw me laying dead on the floor with my head split wide open. And so he prayed. And in that moment, his God was more than enough. And he spared my life. The following Sunday, I'm sitting in church and I'm going through all of the things that I've done and all of the places that I'd been. And I heard the Lord say, "Have you had enough?" "Oh, but God, you don't know. You could never forgive." And he said, "Have you had more than enough?" And I said, "I have." And he said, "Kelly, I will make beauty from your ashes." Revelations 12 says that we overcome with the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And the way that God often makes beauty from ashes is through the word of our testimony. My favorite story in the Bible is David and Goliath. And David defeats the Philistine Goliath with no doubt in his mind of the outcome of the battle, because he had already seen, with God's help, he had defeated the bear and killed the lion, and so he knew that God was going to come through. He also knew that God had called him to be king, and he was not yet king, so his time was not up. You see, when you have seen God work in your life, you have a testimony of what God can do. And when you know who God has called you to be, you have a vision for where you are to go. We often have women that come into choices. They don't have either of those. I listened to your speaker last weekend, and I would have loved to have followed up what she spoke of, because we have women every day who come into our building who have either stumbled into a pit, have been pushed into a pit, or have dug their own pit and jumped in it. But you see, they need people to call them out of the pit. Now, the thing with David and Goliath is when David killed Goliath, he didn't kill him with stones. He took Goliath's sword and cut off his head. The very thing that the enemy was coming against David with is the very thing that David later used to defeat that enemy. And not only that enemy, but all the enemies to come after him after that point. The thing that God is going to use for beauty in your life is the thing that the enemy came against you with. And at Choices, that's what we do. We see women and men who come in. Many are hopeless. Many are confused. Many are lost. And we give them a path to where they can come out of it. So there are a few ways that you can help. One, maybe you haven't had a testimony like me, but have you been in a pit? Have you been lost? Have you been confused? Have you felt hopeless? There are women and men that need you to call greatness out of them so that they can get out of the pit. Another way is prayer. We really need prayer. We are in a battle. You see it on the news. You hear it. We're in a battle, and we need your prayer for not only what happens on a daily basis in the center, but also for those of us that work there. The other thing is, have you had an abortion? Statistics say that there are people in this room who either have had an abortion or men who have participated in an abortion one way or another. You need healing because you have a sword that you haven't yet picked up. And once you get that sword, you can help free other people. So if either of those or any of those or all of those are things that you would like to be a part of, we would love to speak with you afterwards, partner with you in that way, and help bring women out of the pit and into the greatness that the Lord has for them.
Come on, let Kelly know how much we appreciate her story and her journey and her getting to the other side of a tough season in your life to have such a remarkable testimony that blesses others. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Not easy to do, but such a blessing to hear what God has done in your life. You know, like many of you, when I first saw those statistics, I was a little taken back. The one statistic that sticks out is that Fredericksburg ranks in the top 5 in terms of abortions in our state, Fredericksburg. And as I mentioned to you earlier, as a church, we want to be part of the solution, part of the answer. And we're so grateful for what you and for what Christian and a number of others as a part of Choices Women's Ministry or Women's Center are doing in our community to help provide an alternative, an option, a way out. And we want to help in that. And what we're going to do as a church, one of the needs that Choices has is that their telephone system needs to be updated. And today, we're going to make sure that they have what they need so they can put in a brand new telephone system so they can check that off of the things to be thinking about and worried about. And they don't have to be worried or concerned about that. And they can minister to those young ladies and those young men and help provide them with hope and with help and with really another way to do life. And so we're going to put that in your hands this week, and I'm just grateful. How many think it's a good thing to be part of the solution, part of the answer? And certainly we want to do that as it relates to Choices. Thank you so much for coming. Come on, give them one more big hand, both Christian and Kelly. Come on, all those that work there at Choices Women's Center. Come on, let them know that we really appreciate the hard work that they do.